Context. Context is everything. There are societies that are low context, medium context, and high context. And what this means is the context within which something occurs is important because it reflects upon what has actually occurred. So in a low context society, the written word is everything in terms of how relationships go. In more of a medium context society, it's sort of a balance between the written and the spoken word, body language, that sort of thing. And in high context, all of these things are very, very critical to how the situation unfolded in the outcomes. So when we look at research, we have to look at the context of the situation studied. And the reason, again, goes back to the so what question. So what if we studied Bowling Green students and their tendencies toward Twizzlers or toward beef jerky? So what? Well, it could be that we studied this during a time when the economy was in a downturn and people had limited funds, and maybe these things are cheaper one compared to another, and college students found themselves able to purchase more of a certain thing, which drove their consumer choices. Context. The larger context is the issue of the economy and the available money that students have to spend on things. So I can think of a whole number of things with regard to context when I read a study that matter. And all of these questions go through my mind as I'm reading through it. And if the study doesn't answer some of these key questions in my mind, I say, it's great, but again, so what? So we have to address the context of the situation studied because all phenomena occur in contexts that may affect the phenomena. And experimental research strives to control the context and thus the effects it might have on the results, but that can be rarely done entirely. So if we have male and female freshmen tested in a laboratory setting for responses to violent media, for instance, their reactions may differ from those in unobserved settings, and the differences for males may be greater or less than for females. And you can think of a whole lot of reasons on your own as to why that might be, but the fact remains that those could possibly be contexts of the situation being studied. Qualitative research usually considers the context to be part of the phenomena of interest. So when we have contexts that may affect the results of the study, and they're usually within a set of studies on a given topic, we have to make sure that we recognize it's important to take into account the context of the studies when engaging in the integration phase of review. There are hundreds of contexts that might affect the results of a study, including the time and history, geography, socioeconomic conditions, cultural values, current events, and the array of other interventions to which the subjects being studied might react to. Which ones are likely to most affect the results? It's impossible to know that with complete certainty, but prior research, theory, and intuition can help in identifying them. Now, when we go more toward the quantitative side, we don't want to rely on intuition, and we want to make sure that we're looking at things from an empirical and or scientific standpoint, thus taking out the guesswork and increasing the credibility of the research that we're conducting. However, sometimes this is the type of research that you need to perform. So, the characteristics of the people, the schools, the businesses, the operations, the departments being studied are important, and if they're not sampled properly within the considered contexts, as opposed to population characteristics, it could be problematic. While varying contexts in a set of studies on a topic can cause varying results, that will not always be the case. Sometimes the results are fairly consistent across studies undertaken within different contexts, and when this is so, this strongly suggests that the observed findings are robust and not affected by the context. So that's the kind of thing that you want to look at. Key assessment question here: what are the contexts of the study that may have affected the results?